It's getting real crazy with the migrant crisis in New York City, Los Angeles, Houston, Texas, all throughout Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, where I'm from. It's really getting out of control to the point where you can see migrants just laying out in the streets. It's just overran. Like, you literally in the mornings when you're coming out to go to work or take your children to school, you see them like everywhere, just walking around like day walkers. They don't, it's insane. You see them walking with their children, walking together in groups, and you can look at them and know in the black city like this that they don't belong. Like, where do these people come from? We don't know who they are. They're not vetted. It's insane. You know, it's to the point where you have a lot of black people now wanting to abandon the Democratic Party. They don't want to be a part of the Democratic Party anymore. They say that the Democratic Party has disrespected them. They have not listened to their wishes. They have just went and did whatever it is they wanted to do. And now black Americans can see that the Democratic Party is trying to replace them with a new group of people. They're trying to replace their vote. But there's also crime rings. Young people coming over from Venezuela, and they're committing crimes, and they're getting locked up in New York City. But you also had this girl, Laken Riley, down in Georgia, where she was murdered by an immigrant. And, you know, it's just crazy. And people are living in fear because these people are just walking around and you don't know who these people are. But let's check out what the news is saying about this woman that was murdered by this migrant. Check this out.
Is calling into question the vetting process at the southern border and whether more should be done to look into the migrants' backgrounds before they're released into the United States. Joining us now is the spokesman for the National Border Patrol Council, Chris Cabrera. Chris, thank you so much for being here. So when somebody is arrested for crossing illegally, are there any checks at all on these migrants? Do we have any idea who they are actually in the countries that they came from, what kind of lives they led in their home countries?
You know, their fingerprints are run against our records here in the United States, and not all countries share their records with us. So if we don't have access to their records, if they haven't committed any crimes here in the United States, then, you know, all we have to go by is what they say. And, you know, obviously they're not, if they have a criminal history, they're not going to tell us about it. And not enough is being done. Obviously, what happened to this young lady is tragic. Unfortunately, it will continue to happen until somebody gets serious about this. Right.
So we don't know. Someone comes across the border. We know there's a huge number of people, hundreds of thousands from Venezuela, where this man was from. We don't know that he might have been a killer, a convicted killer in Venezuela, and he just shows up at our border and says, I'm applying for asylum. We have no way of checking. No way of checking. I mean, it's on the honor system. Which is a shame when the first thing you do in our country is break the law, and then we're supposed to take your word for it. And everything else you say after that is the truth. It's ridiculous. It's silly. If these countries aren't willing to share their records with us, there's no way we should let these folks in the country. And is that just Venezuela that doesn't share the records, or is every country not share records?
So I don't have a list of the ones that do and don't, but there are some that do, but most of them do not.
So this woman was killed while she was just out jogging, because they were saying that this man was once arrested, but they didn't keep him locked up. And they're not really checking the fingerprints of these immigrants when they're coming in from these different countries all throughout Central and South America. They're just coming into America, and they're dumping them right into our communities. You know, there's an immigrant that was gunned down, I think, in Chicago last week. I mean, it's getting crazy. But I want to take it back to the 80s and the late 70s, when a lot of you had on the East Coast here in Philadelphia, you had already had a lot of Jamaicans here. And blacks and Jamaicans got along. Like, Jamaicans were integrated within the Black American society, and they brought the Black Uhuru and the Rasta and all that kind of stuff. But then you had another group that came over called the Yardies, and you had these different posses that came over, and they were different from the Jamaicans that was living amongst us. These people were ruthless, just a level of brutality and ruthlessness that maybe street Americans had never saw before. And they were coming over here, and their way of dealing with conflict resolution was the machine gun, the Uzi. The Uzi machine gun fire, just spray everything. The spray gang. And they had different crews and different posses, and 90% of them was here illegally. They opened up the borders, and they just let them in. They dumped them right into the Americas, all up and down the East Coast, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia. And they came in wreaking havoc. And this is what they did in the 80s when you let some of these different Jamaican groups that came in. They tore the East Coast up. And that wasn't all Jamaicans, because you had already had Jamaicans that was living here, that was living amongst us. But let's check out what this woman said in Chicago at a town hall meeting when she spoke about what happened in 1980 when Cuba opened up its borders and allowed a bunch of Cubans to defect to America. Check this out.
Good morning.
I'm sure everybody knows about a movie, Scarface, right? It's a classic, Al Pacino, right? Everybody knows about that movie. And we focus on the famous lines in that movie. You know, the acting and the hello to my little friend and all that. But it's the beginning of that movie that matters. When those words are coming up on that screen, that's what matters. And those words say, in May 1980, Fidel Castro opened the harbor at Muriel, Cuba, with the apparent intention of letting some of his people join their relatives in the United States. Within 72 hours, 3,000 U.S. boats were headed for Cuba. It soon became...
But then we move over into New York City, and migrants are filling in Bolton. Now, you got to remember, New York City is the melting pot of America, where you already had a different influx of migrants from all over the world there. And you have black Americans, but you have just as many Dominicans as you have black Americans today. Puerto Ricans and black Americans have always lived together side by side in the communities. But then you start having Dominicans and Cubans, Hondurans. I met people from Paraguay, just people coming in from all Venezuela and all these different places, and they're bringing their criminality to America, especially New York City. New York City is Gotham City because you have so many different groups, from the diaspora and Africa and Albanians and just so many different people. But let's check out what they're saying about how crime is starting to skyrocket now. Check this out.
Orders by a man over WhatsApp of what to rob and what to steal. You see them stealing bags, they were stealing phones, and some of them were already arrested. But here's the problem. Once they're arrested, the NYPD, because New York City is a sanctuary city, has no liaison with ICE. Yes, ICE is very active here in the New York area, as you can imagine. They could not just pick up the phone as you would in many other cities in the United States and say, hey, we just arrested a guy for assault. We just arrested a guy for a robbery. He's been charged. We want to turn him over to you. He's also a repeat offender, which has been the other sore point to many New Yorkers, law-abiding New Yorkers here. We want to turn him over to you, but they can't do that in New York City, because it's a sanctuary city. The Mayor Adams in the past has been very proud of the fact that this is New York. We can accommodate anybody. We can take in anybody. Early on in the migrant crisis, he said, come here, come to New York. We'll take care of you. And New Yorkers, quite frankly, are getting fed up with it. We had, as you mentioned last week, the $13 a day per person debit cards being given to the migrants. Many New Yorkers who are having to stand online at food banks every week are saying, wait a minute, what about us? That would certainly go a long way to helping us with our groceries. We're working, we're trying to make ends meet here. But in terms of the crime wave, we've seen assaults on police officers. We've seen shooting of a tourist in Times Square. Some of these are underage migrants. They're teens, part of these rings that they're being groomed into and attracted into or forced into by various means. We've seen other types of crimes going on. The migrant shelter, men's shelter on Randall's Island, they just decided this week that they would put in metal detectors there because there have been so many problems at that particular location. So it's been one thing after another, complete disregard for the law. And a lot of times they felt like, okay, if they were wearing masks, if they were wearing hoodies, if they had their faces covered, there was very little way to identify them. And because they came across the border, basically the open door that is the southern border of the United States, the southwestern border, they came across, there's no fingerprints, there's no type of ID, there's no type of any type of identification like that. So the police have really had to do a lot of extra work to just even try to figure out who are these individuals. So they arrest them, they indict them, but they can't if it's not a bail eligible crime, which some of these, believe it or not, still are not in New York City and New York State. They have nowhere to put them or send them because we are a sanctuary city.
So you have migrants illegally crossing the border, illegally coming into your city. They're getting free money, free housing. Some cities, some states, they say that they have a right to be to vote, become police officers, carry firearms, while at the same time being here illegally. But they'll arrest you if you so-called break a crime. This is the hypocrisy of America, and how America was built on the auspices of hypocrisy. It's just, America's just, I mean, at this point, with everything to say, if black people, if y'all ain't figure it out or don't get it now, you ain't gonna never get it. Everything is being played out in front of your face, man. They not even hiding nothing no more. They telling you, this is what we doing. Take it or leave it. What you gonna do about it? We bringing these migrants in, we're housing them, and we're showing you what we could have done. But we ain't doing it for you. We ain't doing it for you. We doing it for these people that's gonna come here and work for cheap. We gonna make sure they have a vote, so that way they can outrank and outnumber you, and you can move on into being a fourth-class citizen behind the Latinos and the Asians. That's what they saying to us. So y'all better wake up, man. The proof is in the pudding. I'm gonna cut this video short right here. Leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to Street Media TV. Remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.